Hello everyone and welcome to Career Talks by Council Co, where we try to make your dreams and your aspirations into reality by connecting you with people who are vastly experienced in your field of interest. Today is a special day because we have with us somebody who's experienced in the field of psychology as well as somebody who's entering the field of psychology. So this is the time when we get the aspect of both the experienced as well as the experiencing. Okay, so today we have with us Riddhi Doshi, a well-renowned child psychologist who does not need any introduction, and Ms. Muskan Shah, a student pursuing MSc in Clinical Psychology at Christ University, Bangalore. So before we begin, Riddhi, can you please tell our audience something about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Himangi, for having me here. Hello to everybody, and I'm Riddhi Doshi Patel. I'm a practicing child psychologist, TEDx speaker, author, and a parenting counselor. Been 19 years that I've been working in this field, and psychology is a passion. I sleep, breathe, eat psychology. That's what I would like to say. And thank you once again.
My name is Muskan. So I just finished my first year of MSc Clinical Psychology from Christ University, Bangalore. I was introduced to the field of psychology actually under the guidance of Ms. Riddhi Doshi, and that was my first exposure to the field, and I've been interested in it ever since. I've also given a TED talk under, again, Riddhi ma'am, and I'm also interested in a lot of research and publications.
So wow, so we have Guru and Shishya today, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation. So Riddhi, let me start off with the most obvious question. As a practicing psychologist, what strengths do you see in the new generation that you mentor who are entering into the field, and what is something that you feel they still need to work on?
So what I see in the newer generation is that they are open to experimenting, they are open to learning new things. They're using social media wisely for their research, to connect with people, to talk about their concerns, and even to showcase or bring into light the things that which is not that good and appreciated in the society. So I personally feel that that's something which we all need to learn from the newer generation. My generation psychologist, I guess we miss doing that. And something what I want them to understand, or something, I wouldn't say lack, because I feel the newer generation, the psychologists, aspiring psychologists, they're open to a lot of things, and I'm liking that. One thing which I really want them to understand is that it's okay to be using social media a lot to reach out for your work, or showcase what you're doing, making people aware of the concepts, or awareness, everything is good. But I see somewhere it is overdone, okay? It is, AI is taking over, AI is being replaced in their human touch, AI has been replaced in what they want to showcase. So I feel that they need to be more involved rather than using social media with the help of AI, wherein their personal touch, I see that missing in the post, or I see that when they're portraying, when they're making people aware of things, I see the personal touch is missing. So I think if they can balance it, nothing like it.
Great. So Muskan, this question is for you. You are a student of clinical psychology, and what drew you to this particular field? And in your entire journey, at least till your first year MSc, what is the most challenging part of your training to be an aspiring psychologist?
So in terms of what drew me to the field, I would say in the first place, the clinical psychology is not very well differentiated from counseling psychology in, I think, the Indian society at this point. Clinical psychology is more about mental health disorders. It's more about individuals who are on the more severe end of the spectrum, who need that clinical attention. And I feel like in India, it's still frowned upon a lot. Clinical disorders as a whole is very misunderstood. It is understood as what it's depicted as in Bollywood media, like individuals scratching on walls and screaming and yelling, but that's not what it actually is. And I think understanding that is what drew me to the field of clinical psychology as a whole. And I think the biggest challenge as so far was throughout my bachelor's, throughout my master's first year, I've heard so much about clinical skills. How do you practice it? How do you implement it? All the theory we've learned very well, we know it by heart. But when it actually comes to implementing it, there is a huge gap. When you see someone, you don't understand immediately. You can't just tick off some criteria and be like, oh, like this is what's happening. You need to actually use those clinical skills. And I feel like that is a huge gap that is there right now, like implementing those skills.
So you think the practical application of what you are learning under guidance, obviously, is something that's missing and should be a part of this. That's great. So you have an experience of 19 years and you are just entering the field. So this question is for both of you. That the mental health field is also quickly evolving, changing, the landscape is changing. So what are certain skills or perspectives that an individual needs to get to this field if they need to be successful, or let me rephrase it and say, if they need to be a good psychologist?
Well, we psychologists cannot be using the most social media manipulated sentence which people often use it, that know it all. We cannot be saying that we know it all. It's every day, it's a learning for all of us, and we need to be open to those learnings. Constant, that has to be earned learning, because I did my bachelor in CBT, I guess, somewhere when I was initially starting with my career. And now I see CBT also has evolved a lot. There are a lot of things that we are learning. So I have done my double masters now. Recently, been 8 months that I completed. So each time it is unlearning, relearning the concepts. And if you say that I know it all in the field, you are just done. I mean, you need to be learning, because each day everything is evolving. No two clients are similar. In that case, none of us can be saying that, right?
Right.
A few skills which I feel that is necessary for psychologists. A bend to new learning, or open to new learning, understanding, patience. Patience is something which is most needed. Understanding and implementation of using technology in your practice. And the most important is that accept the newer crowd that is entering the field, okay? Because somewhere there are apprehensions that I see. But I guess the newer crowd which is coming in this the field right now, they're coming up with a lot of new ideas, a lot of new concepts, I would say. Not concepts about psychology, but a lot of other things, right? And that's something which all of us has to be open to learning. So if you're open to learning, I think that's the most important skill every psychologist should be having, as much as you expect that from an aspiring psychologist.
Right.
So I think I would definitely agree with what Radhi ma'am said. I feel like there are so many new aspects. Like, for example, positive psychology as a field was introduced very recently, not that many years back. And there are so many more modalities like art therapy, dance therapy, movement therapy, all of this which has been introduced very recently. So I feel like the hunger, the passion for the field should be maintained. It should not die in order to actually be a psychologist who can do well with all kinds of populations that come in. And I feel like another skill would be patience and learning how to listen carefully, because we do have a shorter attention span. We have a much shorter attention span. And I feel like learning how to maintain that and learning how to develop and build on that is very important.
Absolutely. And I would like to add to what Muskan said, because we all keep on saying that you're not supposed to be judging, okay? And this is absolutely a non-judgmental space. But yes, I see that being a human being, each one of us tends to judge, okay? Each one of us tends to analyze, okay? That's something which we as psychologists need to ensure that we don't do it, not even in our head, because that will impact the way we connect with our client. Our body language probably would be different. So that's something which I think I'll add to what she said.
Okay. So Muskan, this is for you, because there are a lot of younger generation out there who want to enter into this field. So I think it's a mix of interest, exploration and passion. You have studied in various curricula. So can you tell me as to how can one explore their interest into psychology, and then we'll shift to Riddhi ma'am to understand that what they need to do before they jump into the field?
So I think in terms of exploring your interest, a very good option would be to get out and actually get that practical experience. Because even though there are so many fields, there are so many courses online that talk about psychology, like introduction to psychology and different modalities, none of them can give you the actual insight into what the field is like how an actual experience, an actual internship can. And at the same time, there are a lot of things that you can understand in theory, but it doesn't actually hit you how to practice it unless you see it, unless you observe it. So I feel like that would be one way. But even like reading, so reading a lot of textbooks, reading a lot of research papers, they can be great in telling you or showing you, these different fields exist, you can get into them, and helping you recognize which ones of those fields that you can actually get into.
Right. So, Riddhi, generally we tell children at a very young age, around grade 11 and 12, that okay, you have to decide whether you want to do psychology, and and I don't think they have that sort of clarity. Neither will be they getting any internships or having that inclination to read, about it. So, what is one thing that you would tell a parent or a child that they can figure out whether psychology would be an area of interest for them?
Very interesting. So I get a lot of calls from parents, and even children do connect that, can I come and sit with you? Can I understand? I think that's the best way to do it. So if you know a psychologist who can help you with a 1 week time for your child, nothing like it. Okay. So when a child, for me this child only, so 11th standard girl or a boy, if he or she wants to explore the field of psychology, it is good to be working with a psychologist at least for a week to 10 days. Okay. Be there. The psychologist can cooperate in terms of not handling severe cases during those 10 days, or probably allowing the intern to just move out for some time when such clients you are addressing, so that it doesn't impact them. But I guess working for 10 days or being there in the space of psychology and understanding is something which will give you awareness whether you want to really pursue in the field or not. Not only in 11th and 12th, there are youngsters whom I've seen that if they are doing bachelors, they're doing masters, then also they don't want to pursue it because they don't find it as their calling. So if they are sure, then nothing like it. But if they aren't, then it is okay to intern. It is okay to be there for 10 to 15 days, understand the concepts, see if they are comfortable in that space, and then only pursue. Okay. Psychology is not for somebody who wants to take it as a kuch nahi mila to main psychology mein gaya kind of, Right. It's serious, it's difficult, and it is something wherein if you're passionate, you'll be able to pursue it further. Right. Otherwise, you might divert. So understand and then plunge into it, I would say.
True. So, Riddhi, you don many hats, or shall I say, a lot of other psychologists also do. They do therapy, they are consultants, they are trainers. Okay. So how can one explore these different paths at the same time stay grounded into their reality?
The most important is, how do you see the world of psychology? How do you see the world of mental health? Do you see it as a passion? Do you see it as a profession? Do you see it as a time pass? It matters a lot. And if you're honing all the heads when you're talking about as a therapist or a psychologist, your passion equivalently matters, okay? Along with your knowledge. So I would say that while I do multiple things, or while my fellow psychologists are doing, their lecturers, they are therapists, they have their own practice, in fact, they do conduct workshops for corporates or children in schools and all, and that's something which even I have been doing. For each one of us, at least the ones I know very closely, each one of us are very passionate about the word mental health. Okay, we really want to get a difference in the space. We do not allow anything which is against mental health, or as Muskan just said a few minutes back, that anybody who's doing an online course and calling himself or herself a mental health practitioner is not something that we ever entertain, because that's just a subject that you have understood. okay, you have not understood in detail. You have not known what are the nuances of that particular, profession. Okay, so it's very important to just move out. And she rightly said that offline is better. So if you want to wear multiple hats and if you want to really pursue all the things in space where you are working, the most important is knowledge, passion, understanding, and be there. It's important to be there. There are not the time, it's not that always you'll be successful. There would be times that you'll have your graphs going down. It's okay. That's the time that you can learn a new skill, a new therapy, and that's all. I mean, it's a business for you after all, right?
Right.
You are an entrepreneur yourself when you are a psychologist also. So it's important that you work on yourself when the graph is going down. You'll unlearn few things and relearn. That's all you need to do.
Okay. So, Muskan, I think in our previous conversations, you have mentioned that many of your friends took psychology but did not pursue it and now are using another field to pursue psychology. So, I think now people think that we all know that psychology is all pervasive. I mean, you need it everywhere. So, what are some of the other things that your friends are doing, and what is your take on the application of psychology in this modern world?
So I feel like psychology is something that can be applied, as you said rightly, to everywhere. For example, even sports psychology as a field is really picking up in India itself because, having that kind of mental space where you can actually perform your best on the field is something that is very important. And at the same time, even business psychology, industrial organizational psychology, all of these fields are really picking up because it can be applied everywhere. Now, again, a lot of my friends after psychology, they've moved to digital marketing. They've moved to HR. The shift from psychology to HR might still be common, but the shift from psychology to digital marketing is something that's very new because media psychology as a subject, as a course, is all again very new. Understanding how the consumer thinks, appealing exactly to how the consumer thinks. Color psychology is something that's new. All of those aspects can easily be ingrained or implemented or practiced using what you've learned in psychology. So I feel like the options are limitless in terms of psychology. For example, even in the stock market, there is so much mental pressure, mental duress that they undergo. They need to be in a good position mentally to be able to make those quick decisions instantly when you're trading on the stock market. So I feel like there's potentially no field that is a barrier when it comes to the implementation of psychology. It all matters on how well you are aware of the concepts and how well you can think of implementing it in whatever field you go into.
So right.
That's great. That brings me to the question that is about ethics and ethical dilemma. That is something, as you said, some people do online courses without having an awareness of what is happening in the field. So, Riddhi, if I ask you, the question of this ethical dilemma is something that all of you all have to navigate. And how do you manage staying true to his profession? And secondly, what is something that you tell young aspirants who are entering here that how important it is to stay ethical?
That's something I have been talking about since years, and whoever joins me as a team or as an intern also are told very specifically that you need to maintain certain boundaries here, ethics to be maintained. And the ethics here are that you can't be talking about the client anywhere else to anybody else. Okay, why? The reason being, the client might not be comfortable. Like if I'm meeting that person on the road and if I say, "Acha, aapka bacha kaisa hai?" he or she might not be comfortable. So there are boundaries that each one of us has to maintain as much as we maintain any human relationship, right? So ethics here is that you don't know the person unless the person comes and talks to you. Okay, you don't know the other person. If you're meeting, if the person wants to smile, well and good. Doesn't want to smile, you just move off from there. It's not your responsibility to go and ask how आपका बच्चा क्या कर रहा है, कैसा कर रहा है. आपका बच्चे की responsibility आपकी as a therapist only when the client comes to your office, not otherwise. Okay, so this is supposed to be maintained. B, you're not supposed to be talking about your clients or the names or anything related to client directly on the social media. The reason being, nobody would like to be talked, right? Forget that the person is a client, but if I'm also spoken about, or I'm also talked about, or I'm also written about on social media, I wouldn't like it, right? Unless somebody's appreciating.
Right.
Okay, so there are certain things that each one of us, I would say, rather more than the profession ethics, it is a human ethic that every psychologist has to maintain. B, I see the newer generation is following ethics to the T. But I also see that they use names, they use certain times direct case studies on social media, which, if that can be limited, nothing like it, because you can't be talking about it. Come on, you don't talk about your family on social media. It's as equivalent to that. You don't talk about things which are very personal. And for a client seeking, why a client? I would say still in our country, mental health. The word mental health is loosely used, highly manipulated term, but it is still a taboo. Okay, so nobody wants that they are even the third person to understand in their family that they are coming to a psychologist for help. Okay, which shouldn't be, but they have that. So we need to respect it. Simple as that.
Okay. So, Muskan, even as a student, have you noticed ethical concerns that are not addressed in the textbook? I know you do have a subject of ethics that's there. So, maybe in internships or any academic space, and how do you think that you as a younger generation can prepare for them?
So, as you mentioned, we did have ethics as a subject. We've gone through all the APA codes of conduct. We've gone through all the Indian guidelines. We're aware of all of them. And as Riddhi ma'am said, we try to follow it to a T. But in a lot of spaces, we still see, for example, in a lot of internships, there are a lot of senior psychologists who come up to you and they just start talking about a case. For example, I've done some social media internships, right? So in that, when they're talking about content to put out on social media pages, they blatantly just start talking about their cases without hiding any names, personal details, anything as such. They talk about the cases, they go in detail. I've seen a lot of those ethical violations happen. And also at the same time, I feel like there are a lot of ethical violations in terms of practitioners who do practice. Like there are so many people without any qualifications, one online course of 1 month has been done and they have put up labels saying that, oh, we are practitioners, school counselors, so many of them. They have no actual qualifications in the field, yet they come up and this all often has very bad impacts on clients itself. And I feel like ethics as a whole is not followed in India. One of the ethical codes of competency, which is what we've discussed in the start about keeping up with the practices, none of that has been followed in India. So I think there still needs to be a lot of guidelines that come into place for ethics to actually be followed. And in terms of the second part of the question that you asked, I feel like there is still a lot of scope of improvement in that aspect. I feel like there still needs to be a lot of ethical guidelines that have to be put into place.
Okay. Okay. So now this is for both of you, and it's all about AI because I think, sort of talking about tech since morning, and we do hear that now your human interaction is replaced by an AI who can come and give you advice, or it's used in US at a lot of places where they're trying to replace the human component with the AI component who relies on past data, past experiences to sort of give advice. To me, this seems to be quite dangerous. So, as mental health professionals and as a mental health professional entering into the field, what is something that you understand about AI and its applications in the field of psychology?
I agree with you that it is dangerous because of late, a couple of my clients, when they came for the first time, and while I was talking to them, while I was probing them, what I got to know is that they had nobody to share as much as it sounds funny right now to me, but that time it was like I was getting goosebumps because they said that I didn't have anybody to share and I was sharing with ChatGPT. Okay. As much as I understand that ChatGPT is giving you that space to just vomit out everything that's going in your mind, but how would ChatGPT understand that what are your human needs? How would ChatGPT understand your body language? How would ChatGPT understand your emotions? How would ChatGPT understand that what you're actually seeking? Maybe from a therapist you're just seeking I understand, or from a therapist you're just seeking a smile, okay, or you're just seeking a welcome that okay I'm there for you. I'm sure AI cannot be giving this to any client. I feel AI can be used wisely by the therapist in their profession, in terms of spreading awareness, using AI, getting more into detail, getting your post checked for spellings or concepts. On those lines, it is okay. But I don't see AI replacing psychologists ever, because and I think psychologists should be more talking about that a human touch is necessary, okay, a human understanding is necessary. Even if I look at my client while my client is entering my office and I just look at my client and said hi, that hi also is enough to give a feeling of being accepted, acknowledged, that my presence is acknowledged. I'm sure AI is not something which is going to accept or acknowledge. It's just going to tell you something which you've already given. So your inputs matter to have an output. I think that's where there's a very clear-cut demarcation. Human touch and AI cannot go hand in hand. It can be used for each other wisely, but not otherwise.
Okay.
So I completely agree with what Riddhi ma'am said. At the end of the day, we are humans, we are social creatures. We need that human interaction, the human touch. Even as a trainee psychologist, you talk so much about non-verbal cues that you are giving in a session. Those are the cues that actually make them feel like, oh, you're actually being listened to by somebody else. Those are the cues that actually make them go deeper into whatever they're saying, whatever they're thinking, that make them want to share more. So I feel like at the end of the day, that is not something that AI can ever replace. At the same time, I did read a study recently that said that by using AI interfaces and AI platforms, there was a decrease in the symptoms of clinical depression in a lot of patients. So while AI can never fully replace psychologists or therapists, it can be used along with therapy to boost the process or to make the process easier or more feasible. Like there are a lot of ways, a lot of modalities in which AI can be incorporated in the process, but it can never actually truly replace a therapist.
Right. So I understand this is one field that will always be in demand. That brings me on to my second question. Lot of people right now are looking at psychology as a field, thinking there's an immense scope, and there is, because I think the number of legitimate psychologists and therapists in India is a little less. It's also very unregulated kind of a field right now. So, keeping that in mind, do you think that loneliness due to digitization, work from home, is one of the major reasons that has prompted the growth of psychology in India, or the awareness of the need for mental health in India?
So we were just speaking about this. So loneliness is actually an epidemic. It has been termed as an epidemic by organizations. In the United Kingdom, there is a whole ministry just to deal with this issue, because loneliness can be very pervasive. It can intrude in all aspects of your life. It can cause huge functional impairments. So loneliness is an actual epidemic, which is what I think a lot of people maybe are not even aware about. They don't even want to acknowledge. But there have been steps taken for this worldwide, acknowledging how much it can cost, even the economy, for instance. But so I think that loneliness may have been one of the reasons, But at the same time, there has been a lot of awareness about mental health problems. Even though all of it might not be a completely accurate, there is still a growing awareness, and there is a slight decrease in stigma, which is why a lot of people might be actually realizing that, this is not healthy for me. There is something that I actually need to seek out help for. So I think along with loneliness, it's also the increasing awareness and slight increase in acceptance that, I should go out and I should get help. And this is something that I should reach out to somebody else for.
Right. So Riddhi, you talked about the importance of having internship to understand whether you are made for psychology or not. Other than that, what are a few things that, not from only the perspective of psychology, but from the perspective of being a successful psychologist, that one needs to keep in mind? Because yes, I am aware that what you shared is very legitimate, but there are another amount of skill sets that you need, because I feel that you have been listening to the problems of everybody throughout the day, right? So what are those skill sets other than awareness that one should have?
So, to be a successful psychologist, I personally believe that it's very important for you to be grounded. B, how much you are taking care of your mental health matters on your success rates. Success rates here is how well you're able to help your client, how well you're able to support. More than help, it is a word support that is used. How well you're able to support, because are you supporting yourself as a psychologist? So, mindfulness for yourself, self-care for yourself. Are you taking therapy sessions for your own self? Like I do it every 3 months for myself. Are you getting healing done? Because nobody comes to a psychologist to share happy news ever. It is all about fights, trauma, grief, behavior, tagging, negging. It's all that happens in a psychologist's office. While this is something which we, take in, we grasp knowingly or unknowingly, our body takes in, right? More than our mind, more than our heart, our body takes in all that negativity. In that, we also need space where we can just unwind. So, are you a part of a group, where a community for yourself, where you have a support system for yourself? So, these are some of the things which you really need to work. Apart from that, are you understanding AI? Are you helping yourself to understand how to use different aspects of AI to use it in your practice? Also, are you learning how to be using etiquettes, ethics in your practice? Are you maintaining your decorums? Are you maintaining your styling? Because if I am sitting like in my office as somebody who was wearing spaghetti tops, I am not denying that it's wrong. Come on, if I go out, I do wear it. But in my practice, when I believe, and I've seen a lot of people talking about that, a certain way of styling is very important, because that creates a trust factor. Okay, so it's very important for every psychologist even to understand styling, right? So are you going beyond psychology and putting other things on place to be a successful psychologist is something which each one of us needs to understand.
Right. So I think are you developing yourself holistically, especially in
Absolutely.
your emotional EQ and your adversity quotient also, is I think something that everybody needs to be aware
Each
of.
one of us, especially in the field of psychology, because you are surrounded by negativity, right? In
Right.
that space, if you have certain things which you have developed for your own self, or you have a support group, or you have a community where you can just go and unwind, or you can talk about it, it's going to help you as a psychologist.
Great. Coming back to social media, okay, which you said is a part, and we are not going to be denying it, and you knew your ethical behavior is there. But due to social media, there is this I would say unsupported thing that, oh, I do need instant gratification, or I am going to be, I am looking at a mentor for somebody who's successful on social media, because I do not know how to find a mentor. So from both of you, I need both perspectives, that how should one find a mentor, and what would you look for in a mentor after being in this field or after entering this field?
How to look up for a good mentor. See, everybody who's into the space of mentoring are somebody who are good because they are mentors, because they have some capabilities, they have some set of skills, they have knowledge, and hence they are considered to be mentors who can mentor their mentees, right? But one thing is very important, I feel, for the mentees or the people who are seeking mentorship is where are you able to connect with your mentor? Are you learning something from your mentor? Is your mentor manipulating, or is your mentor discussing things with you? That is extremely important. Are you being handholded, or are you being just told that okay, तुम mentee हो, तुम इससे आगे नहीं पूछ सकते हो? You need to understand how your mentor is, and are you able to gel with your mentor? Are you able to learn from your mentor? Are you able to have the same wavelength which you would expect from your own self with the mentor? Then yes, that's a right and good mentor for you. Okay, so I would say, rather than a word good mentor, the right word here is the right mentor for yourself, because every mentor, the person would be having some skill set or knowledge which she or he wants to impart.
Right.
So they are good only.
Okay.
I feel like in terms of looking for a mentor on social media, as you asked, I feel like you would look at what kind of content they put out. If they are okay with violating their own ethics in their own content, that is of course someone that you would not want to go for. I feel like at the same time, if you find someone who has no presence only on social media, that would also be kind of something that you would want to watch out for, because that means that they are not interested in keeping up. At least that's what it comes off as, that they are not interested in actually, like keeping up with what is going on in terms of social media, or in terms of just knowing, what is on social media, since we consume so much of it. And I feel like at the same time, a mentor would be someone, as Riddhi ma'am said, who is okay with teaching you, with actually going forward, because there have been instances, there have been internships where, if you go and ask a mentor something, they'll be like, oh, you'll learn this later, you'll learn this later. They're not actually okay with sharing with you, this is what it means, and this is what you can do to learn about it yourself.
Right.
So I feel like those aspects.
Thanks, Muskan. I would also like to add something here, that numbers doesn't justify the mentors. Okay, so don't go by numbers on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. No, see the content, see the work they are doing. Check on Google, go and meet them. That's the right way to understand whether the mentor is the right mentor for you or not. Okay, don't follow by the numbers at all, because that's not something. It's what. So that's not something which qualifies the right mentor,
Right. Coming back to an important question. So first, Muskan, I'd like to go with you. India versus abroad. As the right place to study psychology, why is it more attractive, let me put it that way, abroad? And is it easy to come back to India, which is actually a place where you get a lot of cases and variety to maybe hone your skill? Why you had an option of going abroad, you had an option of staying in India? What made you stay in India?
So I feel one of the main factors of so I get the appeal about studying internationally, studying abroad. A lot of cases, a lot of times you'll have certain guidelines, certain rules in place abroad that you will not find here. The way the process is so streamlined abroad, the way you have internships that are so streamlined abroad, you will not get those experiences here. In some fields of psychology, for example, IO psychology, I've heard a lot about the UK, I've heard a lot about how good the opportunities are over there. But I feel like for me specifically, because I wanted to go into clinical psychology at the end of the day, I feel like it was a good choice for me to stay in India, because the course can be very, very taxing. It can take a lot of toll on you mentally, physically, in many ways. And I feel like at that point, I would want to be somewhere that is closer to my family. I have done my undergrad also away from home. And I realized that the stress that being away from home can have. So at the end of the day, I wanted to do a course where I did still have the option to go back home to connect as much as I could. And I feel like because I was sure that I wanted to stay back here and practice, there is a huge difference in learning abroad and then coming to practice here. The culture here in India plays a huge role in all of your settings, no matter where you go to work, no matter what field of psychology you go to work in. There are certain things that are very specific to the Indian culture that if you learn along with your masters, I feel like it's just a smoother transition to go from learning it to actually implementing it compared to what you would learn abroad.
Okay. So, Riddhi, you have studied abroad. So, I would love your perspective.
So I remember there were a couple of discussions I had with Muskan and her team when we were all working together. Um, what to say? How difficult it is to come back to India, it's personal choice. I always wanted to come back to India. I never wanted to settle there. If I talk about me, so there are many like me who wants to come back and start practice here. Be India versus any foreign country for psychology. As a matter of fact, UK is better. There are a lot of practical aspects. Internships are too good, which is still missing in our country. And you get to learn to the T. So your importance is given more to theory aspects. Abroad, especially UK, there is more on internships, there is more on learning, there is more on practical aspects, which is, I personally feel it's needed in the space of counseling psychology. The more you come across different experiences is where you will understand that it is different. I understand that every client is different, but at least you need to have a base. And base can come when you have different experiences and you've done lot of internship. And internships are also such that where you get practical knowledge, you are just not left to observation. Okay, because observation doesn't teach you anything. Probably that's the reason I feel that I've been able to give better to, I think, or I feel I'm giving better to my teams and to my interns, because that's the thing that which I had learned while I was pursuing my psychology abroad. Nonetheless, in India, we have amazing universities these days which are offering best psychology. I just want that they offer more and more of internships. They offer more and more of process-based learning, and they offer more and more of practical learning. I think India is far more better in psychology rather than going abroad or coming back. Right?
Okay.
I personally feel after so many years and since so many universities are coming up, certain things we also need to change in our setup here in India. If that is changed, I think we are good. We're very good.
Right. Okay. So, Muskan and Riddhi, both of you all, it's a very unregulated field, as I've said earlier, right? And that can be a deterrent to a lot of people who study but then later on cannot practice if those laws come up, which I'm sure it's now being regulated because it's gaining importance. So I would like your take on it, Muskan, that what do you feel should be regulated? If not regulated, how would you self-regulate? And Riddhi, if you could share light on what is happening currently in that field for making sure that it's regulated.
So, as of now, in 2025, it was the last year of MPhil for clinical psychology. It has now been ended and it has been replaced with the MA program. So, as someone who's going to be graduating in 2026, there's still a lot of uncertainty about where the MA program will be offered, what is the admission like, what are the actual program like, what's the scope after the program. But as far as I think in terms of regulation, clinical psychology is handled by a different regulatory board. It's handled by the RCI. And other fields of psychology are handled by another regulatory board. It's not, I don't think it's a regulatory board. I think it's just, it comes under allied health services and you can get on the national registry if you have the qualifications. But I feel like there is still a huge gap between these because in terms of other fields of psychology, it's not regulated as far as I know. And there is nothing that's in place that you need to have this qualification before you actually start practicing. Ethically, we might have it, but in reality, it's not there. So I feel like for clinical psychology, there is a little bit of structure that this is what you're supposed to do, but because of the structures changing, there's still a lot of lack of clarity in that field. So I think, but RCI is coming up with new like releases about information about this is what the field will be like. So I think it's still a slow work in process, but I feel like clinical psychology is getting a bit regulated at least now.
So since it's not regulated, especially the counseling and therapy part, the self-regulation matters a lot for every professional in this space. I would say that there needs to be governing body which ensures that not everybody and anybody starts talking about mental health. You talk, I'm good with it, but don't call yourself a mental health practitioner unless you have certain qualifications. I recently got to know that there is an organization in India which offers 15 days course and you have a license to practice as a child psychologist. That makes me understand that I gave years and years of learning. What am I doing? Okay, so that makes me feel that kya kiya maine? Okay, jokes apart, but we certainly need governing bodies where if you are a mental health professional or if you want to call yourself as a mental health professional, you need this. That has to be there. Okay, आपको मास्टर्स होना है, आपको थेरेपी करना है, आपको अंडरस्टैंड करना है, आपकी इतनी इंटर्नशिप्स होनी चाहिए. If I think that is also balanced or regulated, nothing like it. That I don't see. As much as I believe that mental health professionals should be supporting each other, communicating the right language on social media, talking about the problems and not mutually, deliberately taking efforts to demean anybody on social media. But here it is important that are you qualified? You can't be a homeopath and talking about mental health. We're just discussing outside, both of us. You can't be a psychiatrist who is demeaning a counseling psychologist. Come on, respect. If the person is certified, respect. If not certified, ask the person to certify, get certified ethically, and then call herself or himself a mental health practitioner. So instead of demeaning each other within the profession, it is important that you get collective and talk against the people who are like calling themselves mental health professional even without a certification, a proper degree. Okay, so you can't be a homeopath or Ayurveda practitioner, you can't be a yoga master, you can't be a dietitian, you can't be an educator who talks about mental health and say, okay, I can treat depression. No, you cannot. Even I cannot be treating depression.
Right.
Okay, so you need to have self-regulation in this profession because you're dealing with somebody's life, you're dealing with somebody's emotions, and you have no right to play with it. You just don't have any right to do with it. So self-regulation, till the time we have a regulatory body, is important. And I think at the end of when you complete your master's, the university should be taking a self-regulatory statement or a letter and take the signature of the child. I mean, the psychologist. I think that will also regulate a lot of things.
Okay. So, thank you both for these amazing insights into this field. I understand that if you are aware of where you are, who you are, and what you want to do, if you are ethical, if you know how to keep yourself emotionally balanced and stable, this profession is for you. And obviously, it goes without saying, patience, learning, unlearning, relearning is a part of the cycle too. So thank you so much, Muskan. Thank you so much, Riddhi, for being a part of this podcast. We hope that this has opened up the field of psychology for you and what it entails to be a responsible psychologist. I will stress on the word responsible. Thank you so much for being with us. Do leave us your comments and what we can help you with to further your careers. Thank you so much. Thank you, Riddhi. Thank you, Muskan.
Thank you so much.